1, 2, 3. All right, we're going live. We're sticking to the schedule, but we have just a short video. We're going to introduce. We did sort of the introduction to epistemology and what we'll be covering, but today we're just going to read a short passage introducing the first big problem, which is skepticism. And then we're going to go take a shower and get dressed. Schedule's weird today. Okay. Introduction. Like Rene Descartes, we have all asked ourselves from one time to another, couldn't everything I seem to see, hear, etc., be illusory? I didn't do any of this. Okay. I'll put in the comments of the live stream on Twitter link to join, but I'm not going to message it out to anybody. All right. Might I, in fact, be dreaming all this? If so, what do I really know about the outside world? The skeptic's answers are pessimistic. Yes, you could be dreaming, and so you know nothing of the outside world. The conclusion is outlandish, and yet the reasoning behind it hardly seems strained at all. We feel the pressure towards skepticism in the movement from the question about trustworthiness of our senses to the question of our ability to know. Given that the bulk of our knowledge of the outside world derives from the senses, how can we know anything about the world unless we first show that our senses can be trusted? The core of the skeptical strategy is more general. How can one gain knowledge using a source of belief unless one first shows that the source is trustworthy? I should have sent this out to Tartaglia and a few other people. We could have had a bit of discussion, but schedules are a little weird today, and I think we're just going to do the reading. Send that. All right. In his selection, Barry Stroud presents the skeptic's argument in its most favorable light. The skeptic does not hold us up to an uncommonly high standard of knowledge, only to make the obvious point that we fail to meet it. The skeptic invokes only the standards presupposed in everyday knowledge attributions. To use an example of Stroud's, if no goldfinch could possibly be a canary, then if one is to know that the bird one sees is a goldfinch, one must be able to rule out its being a canary. More generally, to know that P, one must be able to rule out every possibility one knows to be incompatible with one's knowing P. The skeptic then has her wedge. To know that you're sitting beside a warm fire, you must be able to rule out any possibility which excludes this knowledge, including innumerable skeptical possibilities, such as that you're dreaming, or that you're being deceived by a malicious demon, and that you're a brain in a vat stimulated to have the experiences and apparent memories you now have. But it's hard to see how you can rule these out. In each of the selections from G.E. Moore, the tables are turned on the skeptic. Moore provides a counter-argument in Proof of an External World. A good proof, he explains, proceeds from known premises to a distinct conclusion to which they can be seen to lead. He then produces an example. Raising his hands one after the other, he exclaimed, "Here is a hand. Here is another hand." And he concludes, "There are hands." If asked to prove his premises, he would reject the demand, for not everything that is known can be proved. Moore, nevertheless, takes the skeptic seriously. In certainty, he grants that he doesn't know that he's not dreaming. He doesn't know he is standing up giving a lecture. Still, he asks why there is any more plausibility in using this premise as part of a modus ponens argument to conclude that he doesn't know that he is standing up than in using it as a part of the corresponding modus tollens argument to conclude that he does know, after all, that he is not dreaming. In Four Forms of Skepticism, Moore fully admits that skeptical scenarios are logically possible, but he finds it more certain that something has gone afoul in the skeptical argument than that he lacks knowledge, that he has hands, or is holding a pencil. Moreover, he concludes that since the only way he could know this is through some inductive or analogical argument from the character of his experience, such an argument must exist. The selections from Stroud and Moore concern our knowledge of the external world. One might hope that, even if it is hard to answer the skeptical challenge for knowledge, at least it could be satisfactorily answered for justification. Peter Klein calls the view that we cannot be justified in our beliefs about how things are as opposed to how they seem academic skepticism, and contrasts with it an older form of skepticism, Pyrrhonism. Pyrrhonism, in Klein's view, is a more moderate skepticism than its academic cousin. For Pyrrhonism allows that our beliefs can be conditionally or provisionally justified, but it is still a form of skepticism because it denies that our beliefs can be completely justified. Only if reasoning could settle the matter of whether a belief is true, could that belief be completely justified. But how can reasoning settle anything? If it were legitimate to end reasoning with a proposition for which we could not provide a further reason, then it seems reasoning could settle some matter. But this is not legitimate, nor is it legitimate to reason in a circle. Therefore, the only way for reasoning to settle matters would be to complete an infinite regress of non-repeating reasons, a view Klein refers to as infinitism, discussed in more detail in his contribution to Part 2. While this would be a legitimate way to settle some matter, it cannot in fact be done. The lesson for academic skepticism is that the arguments invoked in favor of academic skepticism are themselves fallacious, in that they either rely on arbitrary premises or beg the question in favor of their conclusion. Thus, consider the academic skeptic's claim that we cannot know whether we are dreaming or deceived by a malicious demon. This claim is central to the argument for academic skepticism. If it is unsupported, it is arbitrary. To support the claim, the academic skeptic must first demonstrate that we cannot know, say, that there is a table in front of us. But I cannot know there is a table in front of me is the ostensible conclusion of the skeptical argument. Therefore, academic skepticism, like the inadequate models of reasoning, must either rely on arbitrary premises or beg the question. Michael Williams argues that if there is such a thing as knowledge of the external world, then kind of knowledge the Cartesian skeptic questions, it seems impossible for us to see ourselves as having it. That is, the skeptic would carry the day. But he asks, is there such a thing as knowledge of the world? His answer is no. The concept of knowledge of the external world is a theoretical concept, and so, unlike practical concepts such as the concept of a chair, it lacks application entirely unless there is an appropriate unified domain of reality whose contours are there for it to match. But there is no such epistemic domain. There could be only if empirical beliefs divided into two classes: those that could only be known on the basis of beliefs about immediate experience, i.e., beliefs about the external world, and those that could be known directly from immediate experience. Yet an examination of our practices in attributing knowledge and justification suggests that beliefs do not divide into these epistemic categories, nor into any objective epistemic categories. Williams describes his view as a form of contextualism, but it is a version of contextualism quite different from those appearing in Part 8 of this volume. The contextualist theories of DeRose and Cohen, and to a lesser extent Lewis, presuppose the existence of a unified range of objective characteristics which, given a speech context, comprise the truth conditions for knowledge attributions in that context. For DeRose, there are the objective, that's the context invariant notions of sensitivity and strength, of epistemic position, and for Cohen, objective notions of strength of evidence or justification. For Lewis, there are the objective factors of one's evidence, and which, wait a minute, for DeRose, there are the objective context invariant notions of sensitivity and strength. Yeah, for Lewis, there are the objective factors of one's evidence and which possibilities it rules out. For all three of these epistemologists, the function of context is to set the bar on which, or to what degree, of a relatively unified range of objective factors count. Thus, for them, there is an independent place for epistemological inquiry into the nature of these objective factors, as well as into how they feed into the semantics of knowledge attribution. According to Williams, by contrast, there is no range of objective factors, with the result that there is nothing at all to serve as an object of theoretical investigation for the epistemologist. Part and parcel of repudiating skepticism, then, is repudiating traditional epistemology. Both rely for their livelihood on the assumption that Williams calls epistemological realism, viz., that there are objective relations of epistemic priority waiting to be described. So we're going to, I know we're just going live here just to read that introduction really briefly, and we're going to get into the first essay by Barry Stroud next week. And the schedule for today's gotten a little strange, so we're not even going to send out the link to have any discussions here. But that's just going to give us a brief idea of what's coming up and what we're going to discuss first. And the last video last week, we introduced everything that we're going to go over in this epistemology course. And so this is just introducing the first section, which is about this skeptical problem and seeing if it can be resolved or not.